Hope you're enjoying Trenchometry. Assuming that you are, please hit that like button and subscribe. Remember, master the trench, you win the war. Welcome to Trenchometry. If you've spent any time in or around the trenches, playing offensive line isn't just blocking. It is chess at light speed. You're controlling angles while a 280-pound defender tries to destroy your running back. Every snap, calculating leverage, mirroring footwork, and anchoring against pure violence. Miss one step and your franchise player gets flattened. We are here to discuss the most undervalued aspect of the game of football, the offensive line. Remember, when you master the trenches, you win the war. My guest today began his career in Dayton, Ohio at Wayne High School under Jay Mitten. He would then play at the next level at West Virginia University under Coach Don Nealon and Coach Rich Rodriguez. It is here he also experienced offensive line legend Rick Trickett. He would log game time at both guards, both tackles, and even slide out into the athlete position at tight end while he was a Mountaineer. He would be recognized with a number of awards, including both second team and first team All Big East selections, a second team academic All-American honor, a West Virginia Gridiron Gladiator Award, a National Football Foundation College Hall of Fame Scholar Athlete recognition, and a Toyota Gator Bowl Scholar Athlete Award. He would go undrafted, but would have a chance to train with another legendary Hall of Famer, Mr. Anthony Munoz. Now he is a career tech director for a local high school in Ohio and is the offensive line trainer for Blockers Offensive Line Academy, where he trained some elite linemen, including Josh Sills of the Indianapolis Colts, Ashton Craig at Notre Dame, Josh Padilla from Ohio State, and Eric Meeks of Marshall. You can find him at his YouTube channel and Instagram handle at Blockers Offensive Line Academy, all one word. Today, I would like to welcome Mr. Jeff Berk to Trenchometry. Jeff, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Most definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, first, before we go anywhere else, Coach Rick Trickett. If nobody has ever heard of this man, first of all, how big is Coach Trickett?
He's very small.
He's a
very short, very skinny guy, but very strong in his voice and very strong in his action.
Unbelievably strong. He recruited one of my players down here years ago when he was at Florida State, and I had a chance to go up and hang out with him for a few days at a clinic. And one of the most entertaining people I have ever been around. He would make Shakespeare proud with some of the phrases that he uses and how he uses the English language to draw pictures of what should happen and what he would do with you if you don't get it right. I'm sure you have plenty of stories about that. Anything stick out in your mind? Anything stick out in your mind that you remember that were you particularly afraid at any point in time when Coach Trickett turned his attention on you?
I wouldn't say afraid. I mean, I was when I was in college, I was a pretty quiet guy, and tried to do my thing the best I could. I mean, there was plenty of things, and it's kind of funny. I actually was back over at West Virginia this year when they played Utah, and a lot of the O-line guys got together and we were telling stories because Coach Trickett's son, Travis Trickett's actually coaching at West Virginia.
Right.
So I've been able to stay in touch with him throughout the years, but we kind of talk about, our very first spring under Rich Rodriguez and Rick Trickett being there. It was the last practice on a Friday before going on spring break, and we did not have such a good practice. And my college roommate, who was also from Dayton with me as well, and he was a quarterback, Derek Jones at the time there at West Virginia. And when practice got over, Trickett brought out the sled, and we pushed that sled 100 yards a shot for probably 45. And then we got done with that, and we started doing crab walks for about another 20, 30 minutes. And you got guys throwing up, I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. And he kept on us, and he would always say, you guys didn't put forth any effort during my time in practice, I'll take your time afterwards. And the funny part was my roommate, who was the quarterback, he went ahead and left and headed on home for spring break and got pulled over by the police on his way home and still beat me home by like an hour and some from 4 hours away because of how much time we spent there on that Friday. And that's one of the things where the pain came in as far as, understanding that when he says you take a 6-inch step going to your right, you take a 6-inch step to your right. Not a 4, not a 8, it's 6. And there's a lot of other stories inside the meeting rooms. And, we sit there and we talk about a lot of these things. And, and it's one of those things at the time, it's you're like, what the heck is this guy doing? And, we heard stories about when he was at LSU and at Auburn, and, we'd go, those stories can't be real. And then we would run into some of those guys that play for him, and they would say every bit was correct. And So as time progressed, and he was very stern and strong on how he expected things done, but he also, he always prided himself that he treats everybody the same. It didn't matter if you
Mm,
were the walk-on or the
mhm.
five-star lineman, you're getting treated the same. But it was a thing, I think he understood what made people tick, and he knew how to kind of hit those nerves and those pieces. So I was kind of fortunate. I got my share vocabulary words thrown at
Mhm.
me and punishment, but his approach towards me was a little bit different than maybe some of the other guys that needed a little more shoving along to get to what he was.
With all those academic recognitions, he could use multisyllabic words with you and go beyond 2
Definitely.
and 3 syllables.
Well, and a funny story was, so he used to run for the upperclassmen. Freshmen all had an academic table after practice. Well, he would run his own academic table for the upper class offensive line. And one semester I didn't do so hot that one semester, and I got put into that academic study table, and that was a whole different type of academic table for us. And but I mean, the big things with him is the knowledge I gained about the game of football, and not just offensive line play. I mean, offensive line play was huge, but he really taught us to understand the whole thing, to read safeties for blitzes, and working your way on down into the box. And that really helped me when I then came back home and was coaching ball. To one, when some of the older coaches, here I am coming out of college, and they're going, "You think you're ready to come coach varsity level, at a major high school program?" And they throw you on the board, and then you're able to kind of go through and start talking and doing some of the things that Coach Trickett required of us. Because in the meeting rooms, he used to toss us a marker, and he would just yell out the formation, the play, the defensive front and coverage, and we would have to draw everything up and be able to go through and get everything correct. Right there on the spot. So that really helped going toward my coaching career, having those experiences. But it was also, looking back now, the benefits of those pieces for coaching. But I will also say he had a bigger impact for me in life as a whole. I've been, very successful in my career in education, being a head building principal of my home high school and things of that nature, and dealing with a lot of the different stressors. Um, you know, I got married while I was in college. Knock on wood, did not have kids until after I was finished, but I have twins, a boy and a girl. And he used to talk to us about some of the struggles that you're going to see being a dad, being the husband, and still having to provide for your family when everybody else is sick and you're sick, but you're not allowed to be sick, and things of that nature. So not only the football side, but also the everyday life and the toughness of fighting through and working through things to make sure you're able to provide for your family and to make sure you're successful in your career, no matter what that path may have led for all of us.
It's funny you mentioned that. I interviewed a gentleman out of Texas, El Paso, a couple of episodes back. He said the almost the exact same thing. He said, "An offensive lineman is what a man's supposed to be. He's gonna do
Yeah,
it all. Doesn't matter how it happens, how you feel. If you're tired, not tired, get enough sleep, not enough sleep, enough food, whatever. You got to go get the job done. And you show up and you do the job, and nobody says thank you. Nobody says good job. They just expect it done. And it isn't until the person that you're doing the job for, i.e., your wife or your child. In this case, his wife was going to get her doctorate degree, and I don't remember what she was studying, but all of a sudden his wife's doing great things, and so she's being recognized, and everyone's like, "Oh, you must have somebody supporting you at home." And he's like, "Yeah, finally, I'm getting I'm getting a pat on the back when my wife does something good, but my kid does something good. A 3-year-old does something great at school, and she gets recognized, and I get a pat on the back for her doing something great. Where were all these things when I was doing good stuff?" So that's funny you mentioned that. I can't stop with Coach Trickett without recognizing the Hall of Famer Anthony Munoz, and what a great experience that was, and how that impacted you as far as the knowledge of the game. I remember watching him play when I was a kid. I would pretend to be him when I was on the field. And then I had a chance to meet him at a Army All-American game a few years ago, and he was just an amazing person, was awesome. And, of course, his fingers go north, south, east, and west. Uh, but it was great meeting him and Bruce Matthews at the same time. But talk about that experience a little bit. Not everybody has a chance to train under one of the best to ever put on pads and walk out on the field.
definitely. It was awesome. When I won the National Football Foundation College Hall of Fame scholarship athlete, so there was 15 of us across all divisions of college football, and fortunately that same year, his son Michael Munoz was also a winner of it.
Yeah,
So
from
we were in New
Tennessee, right?
York. Yes. So we were in New York at the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and we got recognized that same night, and it's kind of a who's who of college football, starstruck. And so Anthony was there, and my brother came, and we were kind of, he's taking me around like, you need to go see this person. Here's Jack Tatum, Archie Manning. He's introducing me to everybody and making sure I went and got my pictures taken and introduced myself. So when we was talking with Anthony a little bit, he brought up that he was starting his own agency representing guys wanting to go to the league and really doing a big focus toward offensive linemen. It was called Integrity First, and one of their locations was going to be based out of Cincinnati, right outside of Mason, where he's from, and or where he's living now. So it's one of those things where we connected. I went down and met with him and the lawyers within the agency, and then they threw a plan out on how they were going to train me, through the weight side, the speed, agility, but then also looking at the technique for offensive linemen, not only for what you're going to do in your pro day, but also now to make that shift from college into and how to be able to use some of the techniques that the pro level is the best of the best, and some of the things you got away with at college just it won't work at that level. So I signed with them and was fortunate that whole preparation up to the draft. Went down there every day for strength training, spent the whole day there, uh, and went through strength training, speed training, and then we would spend about an hour, hour and a half each day just working our techniques alone. Anthony would go through, and I was the consistent, and Michael was consistent, and there was another guy from Tennessee that was there, and then there would be other guys that was training out of their Denver office area that would fly in and do some training with Anthony as well. When Michael would be out, whether it was at Tennessee's pro day or down at the senior bowl game and
Hmm.
so forth, Anthony, I'd have him kind of one on one for myself.
Mm.
And I kind of laughed because one day I was kind of going through the motions, and he just kind of stopped me and he was like, "Are we here to do this or not? Because I can just leave." And it was just like, what? And he's like, "You want this or you don't want it? This ain't going to practice in college or whatever. You're coming in, you're 100% focused. Let's do it." But to go through and to really start seeing and understanding the difference of techniques and the different ways of positioning yourself and how you can block from the pro level to the college level to the high school level really helped me to understand one, using my size for my benefits that you would need at the pro level, where that may not have been needed at the college level.
Hmm.
Understanding the angles. I mean, how big angles are at the pro level. It's not just taking this step. The guys are going to react the way they're going to react. They've watched their film and they know every little tendency about you and pointing out a lot of those things. And then he could bring in some guys from the Bengals, some D linemen that would come over and do some one-on-ones with us. So that was a real good opportunity to kind of see the difference of the speed. I was very fortunate to play against Miami, Virginia Tech, and those in college. But here's true NFL defensive linemen that were on the 53-man roster and out there doing it on Sundays. And then he would go through and break everything down very small, slow motion, and then point out every little piece on how your foot's pointed, how your knees pointed, your height, within your stance to levels that I hadn't really broken down that way myself before. Where before it was kind of do this technique and now get it done. Now it was
Hmm.
breaking down even smaller, and that was very fortunate for me for that time. Not only just to be able to say I'm training with Anthony Munoz, probably the best lineman ever, but to also then get a better understanding of the differences of the different levels, and then also learning how to instruct it and coach it for my future guys that I train, so that then they're able to be successful at the different levels. I laugh because when I started coaching and I talked with our offensive coordinator, I'm like, well, I train with Anthony Munoz, and he's a huge Bengals fan, and he's just starstruck, and he's like,
Yeah.
"You go down there?" And I'm like, yeah, sure. So Anthony was actually recording a promotional video at the time, and he needed somebody to come down and run through some drills. So he's like, "Hey, why don't you come down? I'm gonna run a session real quick."
Nice.
And so we went down, did this video for advertising, and went through the session. And it was just nice to be able to see, and then be able to have those conversations on where things are different. And then just to have him, I mean, he's such a great man. He's a
Hmm.
family man, and he's done everything right on and off the field throughout his whole career, post career. He's huge down here in Southwest Ohio. I'm only about 45 minutes north of Cincinnati, so it's this thing of just to be able to interact with him and to learn, once again off the field pieces as much as on the field pieces to make sure how I handle myself, to kind of match him with it. Unbelievable, and something to always cherish, that not everybody gets those opportunities.
What you said, one of the greatest to play all time. I just happened to see this, I don't know, in the last day or two about Larry Allen
Mm.
and another great. And the one thing I thought was interesting, and this is I never hear anything about like Anthony Munoz in this way, but Larry Allen, they said he used to come to the line of scrimmage and he would make a train whistle sound. And that meant they're running behind him, and he wanted everybody to know on the other side of the line, they're running right here. Come stop it. And I was amazed with that. And then, of course, they cut to a couple plays where he's just steamrolling whoever's in front of him, just big, strong, fast, athletic dudes, and he's just mauling them or chasing down a linebacker from the backside on a pick six and stopping him from getting in the end zone. Just this freak, massive human being of an athlete that can run and can woo woo. That means we're coming right here, boys. Come
Oh
try to
yeah,
come
I
up and
mean,
stop it.
and his athletic ability is just, I mean, oh my goodness, it's a ridiculous of a man of that size that can
Hmm.
move that quick and control his body and all the things that he can do. And and another one, when I look at offensive linemen, I always say, in my eyes, the top two, Anthony Munoz, of course, and another one, Tony Basella. I mean, just watching some of the things that he did was, unfortunately getting injured and kind of cutting the professional career. But I mean, he top notch as well. And like you said with Larry Allen, just I mean, when you see him, it's like, how can a person that big move that fast
Yeah.
and control everything the way he?
Like a baby rhinoceros running down the field, just knocking people over, man. He's a beast. I even distinctly remember as a kid, and I don't remember who they were playing, but I remember Anthony Munoz pulling and leading a toss sweep or something on the outside, an outside run, external run there. And he runs out and he cut block a defensive back and just put that 6'7" frame vertical. Put like that he's running vertical and then he gets horizontal in an instant and just clears everything out. Boom. I was like, oh my gosh, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen is this big dude running out there and just clearing stuff out. Okay, so enough. I was gonna say enough of me waxing poetic about my childhood and my heroes. That's really cool though. Um,
And
Go
then
ahead.
it's like with Anthony, like he would come and run through some of the drills, and just watching him run the drills, I mean, he was still smooth. And
Mhm.
then I laughed because he would come in and lift with us sometimes. And it kind of caught me off guard because he was squatting one day, and he's like, "How much do you think I squatted when I was in the league?" And I'm like, I don't know, what'd you put, 500, 600? What? He goes, "From the time I got in the league, I never put more than 225 on the bar."
Really?
And I'm like, "What?" I mean, I don't, And he's like, "Yep, now do big reps and all of these things." And it was all about getting the depth and everything else, And I laughed because when I came back and talked with my brother about that, he goes, "Well, he did have a lot of knee injuries in college, so maybe that's the pieces, and that helped him, stay healthy and have the long career that he had, and by not loading it so much up." And but yeah, he's a special guy, and skill for what he did, and then just for his teaching, and as he is as a man, and the things he does for the community. On top of that, he's one for everybody to look up for generations.
Is there one thing that sticks out in your mind that he taught you that the difference between that college level, the collegiate level, and moving into the pro ranks? Is there anything that sticks out in your mind that
Yeah,
you
so
remember?
one of the things that sticks out a lot. So at West Virginia, when I was playing under Rich Rodriguez, we were pretty heavy run, and so the way that Coach Trickett would have us in our stances and so forth, it would be a little more hand heavy for the run game. We were in zone and everything. Getting out for pass blocking and stuff would sometimes be a little slow. So I had a piece where I'd have too much weight out there. So Anthony really took my stance and really adjusted it to where it became more balanced, to where I would still have the weight going and the power I needed to get movement, but also be able to get out of my stance quicker
Mhm.
for pass. Because, like I said, we ran more than we passed at that time at West Virginia. Just that total adjustment of learning how to be able to put that weight toward my hand without making it look like it's on my hand.
Mhm.
So he really taught me how to, use the mental weight and the shifting within my hips and within my feet to control where all the power was, for me to get off quickly, but yet not to be in too much of a hand dominant heavy stance or a super light stance, so that I was able to move all four directions and be able to keep up with the speed that I was going to need at the pro level.
So as you start your academy here and you're coaching and teaching young guys and even older guys, as those guys come into the academy, are you evaluating them Is that something you're trying to also replicate with dudes? Are you trying to get those stances balanced and then work from there? Or how do you go about building that lineman that you're trying to improve? What's the first kind of
Definitely.
building blocks you're putting down?
Yeah, definitely. So we'll start with the stance and kind of take a peek and look at them. With a lot of the younger guys, high school age, they kind of just get up and get down, and they don't understand or they haven't been coached or taught how to balance their weight. And so we do a lot of shifting and getting them. And my big piece with them is for them to understand how to fully control their body, all four directions, to stay in that power base and to be able to control the block. And so a lot of them, like I had one young man I'm working with, and he comes up and he plays left tackle and he gets down in his left-handed, or he gets down in a right-handed stance with his left foot back. And I'm like, whoa, what
Mm-mm.
is this? Everything shift over top that right side of your body. When I watch your film now, I see why everybody's blowing off the ball. I said, either you're getting parallel with your feet or we're getting that left hand down.
Mhm.
And of course, you switch and you're not a left-handed guy and you start putting that left hand down. It feels a little awkward, but sit there and work through those pieces. So my big thing with them is always trying to get them to understand how to, one, control their body. Because a lot of times, especially at the high school level, they're big kids that have always been big, and they've been coached, be big and go get that guy out of here. You're bigger than him.
Mhm.
You should move him. And then, like I try to tell them and get them to understand is, as you may play against one guy on a Friday night who's a D1 level talent guy out of your 10 weeks of a high school season. When you move into the college rank, that's every week. And then when
Mhm.
you move into the pro rank, it's every day. And so we really start working on that base piece and then really getting them to understand how to control their steps, cut down their steps. All the guys want to go real big steps and they think getting big and makes them fast and get into places, but then they have no power, they have no control, and then they struggle for 2 to 3 steps to get back under with their base and to get that movement. So really getting them to understand, and we put a big focus on pass blocking because you got schools running triple, you got schools running wishbone, whatever, where the kids do a lot of run blocking but not pass blocking. And like I tell the kids, when you go out to the college camps, they're going to judge a lot of your athletic ability through pass blocking and how you're able to mirror, how you're able to change directions. So I go through and really work a lot of drills with them. And I get the kids to understand, one, when you go back to your high school coach determines what you're doing because he determines if you play. So you must listen to what he says. My recommendation is to take everything we teach you here, and when you go out to the college camps, use this because we're preparing you to be able to show your athleticism and your dominance in those drills that they're doing at the college level at those camps to see if you're someone they're interested in putting on their recruiting list or making an offer to. And that's going to help you the most. So if you're a triple option guy and you're going to go to that college camp and you're going to throw that weight on that hand, like my experience going from heavy run to learning to pass stuff with Anthony is, how can we get it to where you can show what your true athleticism is in those scenarios? So we go through and start from the bottom up and really understand how to control their lower body, control that core, and then we start throwing in hand placements, whether it's two hand punch in, whether it's independent hands, working the combinations, and then I try to use examples of guys from films and things that I've seen and I've posted throughout the season. To say like what you're doing here is what that guy did there, and that's why he lost that block.
Mhm.
Or if you do this here, that's how you can win. And one of the things I learned a lot during my time when I was at West Virginia. I was a much smaller offensive lineman. When we played against Miami my sophomore year, I weighed 250 pounds. I mean, I was small. 6'4", 250. They had me on all kinds of diet programs to gain weight. I could not keep weight on for nothing. I never played college over 275. And it was a thing Coach Trickett did really well of saying, okay, you're undersized. Let me show you how to use technique to be able to go against a Vince Wilfork at Miami and to not be thrown around like a
Jeez.
rag doll.
You had to go a whole game against him?
Yeah, but the good thing is the first year we played, he wasn't the starter yet. They had another guy who was the starter, which we always laughed because the thing was Vince was way better than the other guy, and if the other guy's starting, that must mean Vince takes plays off and things of that nature. But just sheer natural ability, Vince is unbelievable. And so he really worked on, okay, you're always tight, you're tall, you're long, extend your arms. We're going to reverse that. We're going to suck everything in. We're going to bring everybody into your chest as you're underneath his chest. So now they're long arms and their strength is now restricted because they can't use it because you're into them. And so I work with some of my guys, get some high school guys that are smaller size that just want to be good high school guys. They want to start varsity. It's not that they want to go play college ball or got those big dreams, but they just want to get out on a Friday night, and they're always told, you're too small. We don't know how you're going to be able to play because it's X, Y, and Z. And the big thing I always tell the guys when I coached ball, I used to laugh because all my offensive linemen, they were all, I call them the Smurfs. They were all small. They were short, they were skinny, but they were tough and they were smart. And so we could do a lot of things with them. So I really started then working on the hands and taking each kid individually. Like, okay, here is Josh Sills at 315 pounds and flying like a cat in and out of his stance and great athlete versus, somebody else who's a much smaller size. And then I start individualizing with each of them on how they can then start to dominate some of those blocks and be successful for themselves to hopefully give them that leg up, whether it's to get into a Friday night varsity game or to get to the recruiting status. Because one of the things I always tell the kids is if you want to go play college ball, there's a place for everybody. I'm not saying it's D1, it could be D2, D3, NAIA, whatever, but there's a place. And I had a young man the other year ago, he played center for one of the other local high schools out here, and he ended up going to a D3 school, and he ran into the same thing where growing up in there, if he would have been 6'4", he'd have been a D1 Power 4 recruit, but he was like 5'7". We really worked on fine-tuning all those techniques so that he can eliminate when it's a bigger guy, being able to use their size and their length against him. He now knew how to take it away. And I would laugh because as I would run into some guys from other schools that played against him, they would say, man, he did this. And when I said, where'd you learn that? He said, I learned it at Blockers. You need to get with Blockers. And
you cite the source.
Yes. And that's one of those things where it's awesome to hear that you're using it. It's awesome to hear that it's working for you. He was a young man that came to me as a freshman, and he worked hard every off season with his high school with me. He started 3 years at his high school, started as a sophomore up, being undersized, and the credits to him because that was his work ethic that led for that success. But being able to take the guys individually and start working on and fine-tuning some of those techniques to be successful against some of the bigger guys that they may go against, is always a big.
Yeah, I kind of had my first collegiate start was against Chris Slade at the University of Virginia. He ended up being, I don't know if he still is or not, at one point in time, he was the all-time sack leader for the ACC. And that's a heck of a draw to get him as your first collegiate start at UVA. I believe might have been homecoming, or they always had 60,000 really angry hillbillies there at UVA. And I remember hitting him the first time, and I felt like a little kid, trying to beat up his big brother because he kind of put his big, and I got decently long arms, but I don't know how long his arms are, but they were significantly longer than mine. And I went to punch him on his chest on our first pass pro, and his hands had got to my shoulders, and I was still kind of barely finger tipping it out there. And I was like, oh man, we're gonna have to figure this out quick, or it's gonna be a long afternoon. And managed to get it figured out quick, but that was scary the first time you go to punch somebody, you can't reach them because their arms are longer than yours. So
well, I left. My first game I started was against Syracuse. So I started at guard, and midway through the game, our right tackle got hurt for a couple of reps. He got hit in the groin, and so he goes off. So I get moved out to right tackle, and the next guy comes in at guard. And I laughed because our left tackle, he kept joking all week with the right tackle because at that time, Dwight Freeney was the end at Syracuse. So he always joked with the right tackle, I'm going to tell him to go over there and get you. And then he'd go, Berk, if you get moved out there, I'm telling you, you got a freshman over there. Go get the freshman. And so I get moved out the right tackle now. Dwight is taking every rep against our left tackle all game. I come up, I get in my stance, I get set, I look up, and I see that 54, and I go, uh-oh, let me scoot back here a little bit. And so I scoot myself back a little bit. And
Yeah.
I mean, the ability that he had to stay low, to go from a power bull rush back out to a speed rush was unbelievable. And unfortunately, we'll put the blame on the quarterback because they never get blamed. Quarterback doesn't step up in the pocket, and he swipes, and he causes a fumble and recovers it. And knock on wood, we watched the video, and I laughed because everybody goes, oh, Coach Trickett is going to rip your butt. You're going to get ripped so bad on that one. So we get to that film, and Coach Trickett's like, well, if your quarterback would step up, that wouldn't have happened. And go to the next play, and I'm like, yes, yes.
Man, you dodged one of the two bullets there. You caught the Freeney bullet, but you didn't dodge you dodged
But
the
that's like
Trickett bullet.
the joke became, well, you know what highlight they're using for his NFL draft highlight?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that happens every once in a while. You can't it's funny, you block 9 out of 10 and you're pretty darn good statistically, but that one time could be a complete torpedo to the mission there as they get that turnover on a swipe. Okay, coach. So as you mentioned something, you talk about balancing your feet up there in the pass pro or in the stance. Do you teach a balanced stance or a less staggered stance? Is that how you're going about what
So
you think
depending on
probably is the best way?
Yeah, so if it's someone who's really struggling, like if they're on the left side and they're really struggling getting that, getting that left hand down and they just feel they have to have that right hand, we'll go out of a balance stance, parallel, and work from there. I usually try to make sure we get a stagger stance, and really try to drill the guys on that to get there. And then my pieces I really work with them on is that piece of understanding wherever that play is going or what they're going to be doing, shuffling that mental weight amongst the inside four balls of their feet, depending on if it's going right, left, forward, backwards. So we'll do a lot of different things in that nature to work on getting that balance, especially high school. The kids, if you really watch them, as you know, coach, they show everything they're going to do. A lot of the offensive linemen, you can tell when they're going to pull. You can tell when they're firing off. I had a young man out of Wayne. Well, his name is Robert Landers. He went like D-line at Ohio State, and he was going against Josh Myers, who played O-line at Ohio State and then played for the Packers for a little bit. And that was one of the big things when we watched film, and he's like, I can really see everything he's doing by how he gets in his stance. And I said, well, I said, the benefit for you is you study film as a high school kid. Most high school kids don't do this. So the big thing I try to get a lot of the kids to understand is how to balance and shift that weight to where it's nothing visible by film and it's nothing that you're going to see right there at that
Yeah.
time. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll bring in some of the D-line guys that I know, and we'll do one-on-one reps. Now, and one of the great examples when I very first started doing the training, I had a young man by the name of Chris Beach. He played at Ball State. He was at high school. His high school ran the wishbone. If they passed 5 times a year, that was a lot. So we worked on the pass blocking like crazy. So I brought Robert in one day. Robert was getting ready to go to Ohio State at that time. So they're going through, and Robert probably has one of the quickest first steps I've ever seen a D lineman off the ball to this day. And Robert was getting off, and he was just killing Chris. And then I would sit there and tell the guys when we do this, all right, D-line guy, I want you to say everything that you saw that made you do what you did. So he would go through and explain everything, and then I'd tell the offensive lineman, now remember when we do these drills and we do this technique, that is why I need you to do that, because that is what he's looking for. And Robert had the craziest thing, and I just sit there and looked at him like, how do I – and Chris goes, well, how are you getting such a quick jump on me? Robert goes, well, you hold your breath before you snap the ball.
Mm.
He was a center, and I guess he would take a little deep breath and hold his breath right before the snap. I try to get the guys to understand everything you do at all times is being evaluated, and especially when you're going through this recruiting piece and you're trying to get yourself recruited, the same kids that you're taking these reps against, you're going to see at multiple camps. So the ones that are really hungry and doing their due diligence, like he is, are going to learn all of your traits, especially if you're a young man who already has offers and they're trying to get them, so that they know how to beat you. So we got to make sure that we're getting ourselves balanced here. We got to make sure we're not giving away any clues whatsoever that's going to let them know what we're doing. So we sit there and we start working on that balance and shifting it back and forth. And kind of like what I'll do is I'll take the kids and they'll get into their stance, and I'll sit there and I'll work with them, just shifting their bodies into the pieces real small. And if they still struggle to do it, I'll get over there, I'll get on the ground, I'll start pressing their foot down hard. Like, this is where that pressure needs to be. Feel how it feels when I'm jamming it down. That's what you need to be able to do in that stance to be able to get the movement that we're looking.
Jared Southers out of Houston. We talked about this probably episode 15, 16. He talks about people, offensive line coaches that coach, say the word step. I want you to step. He said, I don't want you to step. I want you to drive off of that other foot, right? You're pushing. You're not stepping. You're pushing in order to put that weight where it needs to be properly on the foot in order to push and accelerate. You are going to step, obviously, but to accelerate the step with a push, that's a key component of what you're talking about there is making sure the weight's on the inside ball, the knuckle, inside knuckle of the foot, or the middle knuckle of the foot, or the, whatever it is that you're trying to establish there and get ready to go, to feel the various parts of your foot that you can push off of to get the various angles that you need to get and push and accelerate that step in the right direction. That's key, I think. I agree with that 100%.
Definitely. And that's like big time, especially working with tackles. I laugh with the guys. I go, if you were in the 80s, you'd be perfect, because a lot of the kids are still taught to kickstart the motor, the dirt bike, and they got that huge kick with that, their right leg, left leg, whatever their kick foot is, and trying to get them to quit lifting that leg so high, keep that down, but let's drive off that inside foot. And you're going to be faster driving off that inside foot than you're going to be reaching high and long with that outside kick leg. And that's a piece for a lot of kids. Like when I talk with them, they'll say, well, my coach just says, get back. Just get back there. Get back there. And I said, okay, but we need to get back there and be in a power base. So when that contact happens, you're still able to control the block. You just getting back there does no good. So we really sit there and focus. Of course, Charles, Bentley made it real big with the drive catch and all of that stuff with offensive line technique, and using those principles and trying to get them to really loosen up that kick leg, to really drive off that post foot, and to get themselves back there with that versus those long reaches. And that's a big thing.
I was going to say, when you just said that, it kind of something materialized in my brain there. The big kick kind of lifts you up and brings you up out of your stance and opens up that chest, gives them a little bit bigger target to power through if they want to do if they're full-fledged driving through you there with an aggressive attack at you. You're uncoiling that spring a little bit. You're losing some of your power, some of your quickness. Whereas if you're pushing, as you said, to drive off that inside foot, you can stay down there. You can stay coiled. You have a little bit better body position and lean, and you can protect that I call it the steering wheel. And here in the chest where your shoulder pads kind of come down, that steering wheel, if somebody gets a hold of that, they're going to push you wherever they want to take you. And you don't want to give that up. So I interrupted you though. That was just something I thought about on those big kicks.
Definitely. And in one of the other things that I've really seen with that drive versus reaching with that kick foot, it helps the younger linemen stay square. When they start reaching with that leg, it starts pulling that outside hip, and those shoulders and everything get turned within that first or second kick. And it's like I tell them, like, you're getting beat inside, aren't you, a lot? All the time. Can't stop it inside. This is why. You're reaching big with that kick. It's turning that hip. Your whole body's got to totally turn and get back into this position for you now to be able to stop that guy. And if you got a good speed defensive end, you're not going to get there. And so that's a big piece, especially with a lot of the younger guys, is getting them to understand to keep that hip square. And with Coach Trickett, as tackles, we were straight vertical set. So I'm a big vertical set guy because through my experience, I've seen where it was successful and how it helped me. It took away where I may make mistakes in my technique or my speed of getting off, and it eliminated because of the angles that we were going. So I'm a big vertical set guy, and that's a big piece that I work with the kids is, when you're doing one-on-one drills at a camp, it's different than doing a one-on-one pass in a game. It's just a whole different life. And getting them to understand, like, when you do this vertical set, you drive off that inside foot, you keep your shoulders square, 9 times out of 10, that defensive end, the ones that are average to slightly above average, they're going to run the hoop on you because they are totally waiting for that shoulder to turn to dip inside, and they want inside because they feel if I get inside, I win and I get to touch the bag and hoop and holler and everything. You stay square. You're never giving them that angle, and you're going to run them around the hump. And it's going to look like you're the greatest pass setter there was, and it's just that you're playing that drills game.
They only get one option. You're only giving them one option to do because you close that. I call it opening the door. When you get perpendicular line of scrimmage with your hips and shoulders, you've opened the door, and there's no, like you said, you started off with it. You can't protect the inside. There's no weight room drill that you can stop a 300-pound dude from running inside. Like you have your forearm, that's it. And if your forearm's there, all you're going to do is hurt your shoulder. You're not going to be able to stop anybody from going. So I'm a big stay square guy too. I agree with that. That's drives me crazy. I see. What about the footwork, coach? See a lot of guys now coaching and teaching the outside foot turned out to make it easier on them to move. That always scares me about opening the hips up too quick. What's your thought about that?
So I teach the outside foot out, get the 45-degree angle, but the big piece that I get with them is when you do that, I must have that knee inside that angle.
Hmm.
And that really helps keep square and keeps them from opening out. The ones that like to keep that knee feathered out or keep that knee on top of the toe, those ones still have that problem with let's open that gate. But the ones that are able to keep that knee inside that ankle throughout that set have been pretty well. And part of that, my philosophy and belief with that is a lot of the kids that try to keep that kick foot flat, they don't have a lot of ankle and Achilles flexibility. They're a little stiff, and they're getting up on that toe a lot. And then when I go through and I break down film, when I'm watching kids just looking at their feet doing it, the one thing that I'm seeing is they're taking that set, they're staying square, they're doing good. That defensive end comes in to cross their face, and since they're on that toe, they lose that little tenth of a second to get that foot flat to
Yeah,
come
get back
back
down.
in, that now they're fighting behind. So I've kind of went to the part of, okay, let's go ahead and point that toe out, get that knee inside. So now we land flat footed every single kick so that if they come in, we're matching them at the same speed and it still keeps us that slight half ahead of them. So that's the big piece that I really work with the kids on doing. Now, you take a young man like Ashton Craig, his ankle flexibility was the craziest I've ever seen. I mean, that man's flexibility in his ankles was, he could keep toes straight, get feet totally flat. He didn't have to worry about those things. But for most of the guys that I've worked with, they're stiff. And so that's a way for us to kind of combat that stiffness as they continue to work on trying to become more flexible to be able to still control that block.
You mentioned keeping the up on the toe and having to bring that foot back down to have contact with the ground in order to move. But I wish I could remember or give credit to whoever introduced me to this concept years and years and years ago. But that's where I stopped putting guys in their stance. I wanted them completely foot on the ground in their stance. So that same type of concept, if your toe's up in your stance, if you're staggering, you got that toe up, your foot has to come down and strike the ground before you take your first step. And there's wasted time, as you mentioned, that tenth of a second, or however long, nanosecond, whatever it is, you're wasting that. Whereas if you start flat, it's already there. You can just straight push off and gain more ground quicker. That's a good point.
Yeah, and that's the piece I hate with kids. Like, today's game, it's all about speed. And if I tell them it's about speed, but it's about controlled powers. So you got to be fast, but you got to be able to stay in a powerful position and keep it under control. And so when we're going through and working all those things, that's some of the big pieces that I'll start hitting on them for them to not just take off flying. Because you get a lot of guys that just fly out of their stance and yeah, they look really fast and they're big guys. But I'm like, man, if we put a decent sized defensive end on you, it's just not going to work.
Are you teaching combatives? When I say combatives, the hand fighting that happens when you get a rip and somebody swipes your hands, how you reposition the hand, punch the armpit or punch the hip and press. Do you do a lot of combative stuff when you said you focus on the passing? Is that something you work on too as well with the guys?
Later on, we do. So I put the bulk of the focus on the lower body and then controlling, your core. And then once I see the guys are driving off that inside foot, they're staying off the toe, they're staying square. And then we work a few things on when you should be punching to get the most power out of your punch. Once they kind of master those pieces or get really close to that, then I'll start doing some of the combative stuff. The other year ago, maybe about 2-3 years ago, uh, I had a handful of guys that was, going, to go to big time college, and they were struggling against the long arm bull rush, and it was just killing them. So we really worked on how to combat the long arm bull rush, to be able to stop it, to be able to, adjust to it. And that was some things I picked up watching some other coaches, on YouTube and so forth, because the kids were just so mentally frazzled that when they played against a longer guy that they seen on film that did that, mentally they were struggling. And we really worked big time with that. And then the other piece, the tough thing a little bit is every coach has different philosophies of two-hand punch versus independent hands. And, the couple guys I played with that's coaching D1 ball, Garen Justice, who's at SMU, was a teammate of mine, and Ryan Stanchek, who I believe is down at Texas El Paso, offensive line coach. I talk with them on some different things and looking at the independent hands so that you're able to control if you do miss that punch. Or we did a lot of two-hand punching in college, and we used to have a defensive lineman who his hands were like 2 times the size of mine. And he used to catch our punches. You kind of talk about the guy You want to get, he would catch our punches and mid punch and just
Mm.
throw our arms up and just run right through us.
Yeah.
It's like, man, if we'd have done some independent hand things back then, he'd have caught a hand, but I'm going to have another hand to give me some support in here. And so we work on some of those things, but I really moved the hand pieces later toward the end. And I know when I talk with, a lot of my guys, when they go up to college, they're like, hey, we're spending a lot of time on hands, maybe do more with hands. And my piece to them is, I want to do more, but until we master the lower body, I can teach you everything in the world with the hands, but if your lower body's all over the place, you're going to get killed still. I'm like, when I get a group of kids that really progress really fast, and we can get there. And even when I do, so I do my training group session, I will have a couple kids that, okay, when we do these drills, you have mastered the lower body. I could use you as a, example video. Now you're going to start working the upper body, working your hand combinations and some of those things while we're doing these drills. And so I'll start individually picking those kids, and they'll start doing some of those hand things while the other ones are still focused solely on the lower body.
Yeah.
But it's later towards that progress time of training. And then, like, for my training, so I just train during the off season. So I go from December to end of May. With that, my philosophy of that is, one, during the season, you're being coached something by your coach to do. I don't want to give conflicting things that's going to mess up what you're being told. Two, you need a day to rest your body.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to be bringing you in here, putting you into a squat and burning your legs out more. You need that rest. So we're working kind of on a 5 to 6 month availability of doing the training. So, and it takes a good bit of time to get that lower body training. As I tell the kids all the time, like, you've done that set right there with the incorrect technique over 10,000 times in your playing career if you've been playing for a while. It's going to take us a lot of time to get that knocked out and to get things structured and molded the way that it needs to.
Yeah, if you're off balance, if you're outside your framework, if you can't get to the spot, if you can't get to that intersection spot where the collision is going to happen, it doesn't matter if you can punch, if you can swipe or any of that kind of stuff to fend off a rip or whatever. It doesn't matter. I agree with that 100%. All right, back to the one thing I wanted to ask. I want to see if what your thought is here. You got a combo going on, some sort of duo block or two guys working together, two wingmen working together, guard, tackle.
Are you
Say
looking
they're
like pass
comboing a three.
game or are you looking run game?
We're talking run game now. Run game. Because this is in the like. I want to see if I can get a good. I want to see if I can catch somebody's catchphrase here and be able to steal it from them. How we all football players and coaches are all stealing from each other. When you got that tag happening and you got to say a guard is basing the three and the tackle's coming down to help on the three and they're looking at the backside linebacker. They want to come off. Backside linebacker is going to scrape over. You're getting into a UU or me call, that type of thing. When are you telling the tackle if that linebacker scrapes to the outside and the ball's heading outside on outside zone or whatever power, whatever it is, maybe it's a bump wall where you're rubbing or a combo, whatever, it doesn't matter. When are you telling that tackle to come off the down guy? Obviously, we want to block the down guy first. Always concerned with the down guy. If you can't block the down guy, you get 1 yard. If you can block the down guy, at least you get 2-3 yards maybe. If the linebacker makes a play, so be it. What's your trigger for having that outside guy come off for the backer scraping over the top?
Gotcha. So for me, it's when they see the backside number of that linebacker. So of course, like you said, get that movement, get that push going on that down lineman. And then when you see that backside number, the bigger piece that I start working on the guys with is, because when you're waiting for that backside number to see, you've waited a while. That guy's scraping. I mean, he's moving. So the big thing I work with the guys is on what we call a skate technique. Is when they're coming off, what their technique is coming off to that backer. So a lot of times you have guys that will come off and their angle will just be too narrow, and now they're behind that. So what I do is, so when they come together, you're doing your double team and you're driving up, that once you see that backside number, that you now skate at that angle, keeping your shoulders square and everything, and then you're skating at that angle. So now you're able to get that linebacker because the back's going to, and I'm a big zone guy. So it's like that your running back's going to make you right by making that backer cover. So we'll work it to where some guys have where they work the hand on that double. Some guys throw the flipper to stand them up. I know for me, looking more backside than play side, my big thing was always I'd take that left zone step and I would throw that big flipper and just try to roll the defender all the way up. so that the tackle can get underneath of them. But my cue would always be that backside number that I'm rolling up, and once I see that number come, I'm skating off at that 45-degree angle to where I know the plays should be going and where he's heading. Because if that running back then decides, let's say we're doing outside zone, I'm playing right guard, we're going left, and I know to go that C gap where he's going to stick in that B gap, and if he sticks it in that B, I'm going to hit that backer right when he cuts off my butt. So that's kind of the pieces that I use working on those double teams.
Yeah, that I subscribe to that same theory of 45-degree angle coming off, trying to make sure you keep your head out, or at least keep an eye out so you can see. Don't bury your head down. One of the coaches I talked to says, don't watch fat. I don't want you watching the fat on the on the defensive tackle. I want your head out so you can see what's going on and to get out that good 45-degree angle and actually I call it a vault. You said skate. I think I call it a vault where you're going to use that hand and vault off that down guy and push yourself out at a 45-degree angle and take that outside foot step and set that angle. And then at that point, I call it a backside linebacker cutoff drill. And we would do backside linebacker cutoffs where we're trying to get on that 45-degree angle and get leverage on that linebacker. And that's all it is. And you watch guys, I always used to joke with our linebacker coach, you guys do shed drills. You always are shedding straight ahead, shedding straight ahead, shedding straight ahead. I said, when do you guys ever do a backside shed drill where that guy's running at a 45 and you got to scrape and you're out leveraged already? You guys don't ever do that. I said, guys, look at our linebackers. Our linebackers never do it. And our linebacker coach is a great linebacker coach. Do you think any of those subpar linebacker coaches are doing these drills? I said, you put yourself in that situation where you're running a backside cutoff drill at 45-degree angles, you're going to win that every time. Or if you don't win it, at least you're on the backside number and then you just push him back and your running back cuts off. As you said, hopefully you had some guys that could read it and make that guy wrong. And now the linebacker's getting chewed out. Coach, I scraped over the top. I contained him. Well, that guy 80-yard touchdown. What happened? And the poor linebacker's pulling his hair out, and the defensive coordinator's pulling his hair out, and all we're doing is just taking what you give us and selling our technique, doing our technique.
And then one of the big coaching points there is the guy who's standing up that defensive lineman is keeping that outside hand free. Especially with the young guys, they always want to try to get both hands in there. That's the reason why I usually tell them I like the flipper piece, because you're focused now on getting this roll and getting this lift versus when you come with a hand punch. Now you may think pass and punching, but that's always a big piece that a lot of guys younger guys really struggle with. They all want to get that extra hand in there.
Well, on the pass pro, I'd call it opening the door, where you're 90 degrees perpendicular line of scrimmage on our side of the line. And I would call it closing the door if you took that extra outside arm and now you're perpendicular 90 degrees on their side of the line of scrimmage. Either way, it's a bad thing. You can't fight through that. Now you're running down the field perpendicular and you're trying to fight through your hip, you're fighting through your shoulder to get leverage. And again, all you have is one hand out there that you're only going to grab and hold or get a penalty or not do your assignment. So staying square, I think you mentioned that earlier, and that's something you said you harp on. That's something you got to do that. If you're staying square, you got a chance in the fight. At least you're going to have a fighting chance to get your job done. Well, Coach, all right, as we start to wind down here, I got two questions I always like to ask at the end of our interviews. And I just added the second one after talking to a bunch of guys, and I found this is kind of interesting. And so we'll start with the first question is, do you have any particular offensive line funny stories? And offensive linemen are characters. When you get them together, who knows what's going to happen? Is there anything that sticks out in your mind with the guys you played with or guys that you've coached? Is there any characters that have stories that you could share with us that illustrate what a character the offensive line mindset is?
So there's a couple, and the one was when I was coaching. And so I was very fortunate when I was offensive line coach. Like I said, my guys were small, call them the Smurfs. Tough kids, smart kids, but very small, undersized. But at that time, we had a very, very great quarterback by the name of Braxton Miller, who played at Ohio State. And I'll laugh because, like most offensive linemen, we're the mushroom. They're getting yelled at. They're getting everything. So I had one young man who played tackle for us, and then he moved down to center, and he snapped the ball, and when he snapped, it was a rocket. I mean, that thing was zooming. And every now and then, he'd stand up, get his butt high, and that ball would fly up high. So he was snapping, and then, we're running through team drills, and we had a couple bad snaps in there. And our head coach is just on him, just ripping him left, the whole line, just ripping them to death. And, you can start to see their morale, their mindsets going down. And at this time, I was an offense coordinator, O-line coach. So I'm like, man, my guys are dying. They're tired of getting ripped by the coach, by the head coach. and they had a snap. The next snap, it goes about 20 miles high above Braxton Miller's head. And, when you got a star like Braxton Miller, you don't get yelled at too much. So I see the head coach come flying across the field, get ready to go off on the offensive line. And I turn around and I go, Braxton, I thought you were supposed to be this great athlete. You can't even catch a football. The head coach stops dead in his tracks and looks at me and just stares at me. We run the next play, and he comes over and he starts to kind of get on me a little bit. I said, my guys couldn't handle another minute of you chewing their butt, man. I had to stand up for them somehow.
Yeah. So you
That's
threw Braxton Miller under the bus.
Exactly. And I said, because
and
guess
backed
what?
it up over him too.
Yep.
You hit him going and coming on that one.
And I'm like, they fight their tail off. They do everything they can. Here's Braxton, the All-American, and Braxton was a great young man and everything. And they're all like, man, he never gets yelled at for anything. And now they're all like, oh, yeah, he got his butt chewed. So after the game, I grabbed my center. After the practice, I grabbed my center and I said, that snap was horrible, right? He goes, yeah, I do. I was wondering what you were talking about. And I'm like, hey, I just had to defend you because I could just see your confidence and everything was crashing. And I'm like, I got to find a way to build you back up here a little bit.
That was your get out of jail free card right there.
Exactly. I'm like, I got to find a way to get the heat off you. And, I'll yell at Braxton and let the head ball coach look at me like I'm crazy and have no clue what I'm talking about for a minute.
Oh, that's great.
So that was a funny one, coaching just O-line and everybody as a whole. Funny offensive line at West Virginia. We used to do different games where you would have a team and it would be by your position. So, our team was the offensive line. And you would do competitions each Wednesday all off season. And then, the winner of the whole off season would get something special, and, different meal or whatever it may be. So he did one where we went over to the West Virginia pool and we were doing like relay races and everything. And we had an offensive lineman that was like, oh, I'm so excited for this. I'm like a fish. I'm a fish in the water. We're going to win this. So we go over and we get smashed. I mean, it was bad. So we come back for our position meeting, and Coach Trickett goes, like a fish? You're like an effing turtle. That's what it was. Like, I'll never forget that piece. It's so funny because he was sweet, like, we're going to win it because I can swim. And, and we did things like you had to wear a jersey and you had to swim your lap and jump out, rip your jersey off, and put it on the next guy. And when he went, that jersey on him turned him to a turtle instead of a fish. And Coach Trickett made sure he pointed that out.
Yeah, don't say you're going to do something and not do it. That's not a good game plan to throw out there for sure. Definitely. All right, Coach. My last question then is, back in your playing days, and this could change too in between your playing days and your coaching days. You're getting ready to walk out the tunnel as a player and a coach. You can answer it both ways here. And you're getting ready to walk out the tunnel, and you have your earbuds. You take your earbuds out. What was the last song that you were listening to before you headed out the tunnel as a player?
And every level's been a little different. So in high school, it was actually a whole song that the whole team listened to, and that was Phil Collins' "In the Air Tonight." Okay. That was the final song we listened to before we stormed out onto the field. And in college, it was a big hit and miss. During that time, may have been some Tupac, may have been some Eminem, some different things in that nature. But it was really based on kind of the mood. Sometimes it was country music, sometimes it was rap, hip hop. It counts around. As a coach, fortunate to go back and coach where I played high school ball at. So we had Phil Collins piece, as that was just a big tradition thing that still goes on to this day. They started in the 80s when it first came out, and it's still going. And but there, I would say it probably shifted a little bit more toward the country side of things, just kind of relaxing, trying to get your mind clear, and just kind of leave me alone, let me be, and go through your routines. During my college days, I was pretty superstitious on certain things. So I had this T-shirt that I wore from the hotel to the stadium, and then I had this T-shirt I wore while I was getting taped, and all of those types of things. And then it was like, usually if I had a really, really good game, it would go, okay, what was the song I listened to? I'm listening to that before the next game.
Okay.
And then, then if I had a bad game, well, that song was bad. We
got trash. That's awesome. Well, somebody mentioned it a few shows back, and I was like, well, that's an interesting concept. And so I've asked the last few guests that, and It's always interesting to hear. I had somebody said gospel once they got to be a little bit older in college because they just wanted to get right with God before they went out there and started trying to hurt people and harm people and some interesting recommendations there. So, well, Coach, tell us where we can find you on your socials and what you got going and where you are. Maybe somebody up there in Southwest Ohio is looking for somebody to coach them up, and where could they find you?
Definitely. They can find me. They can go to our website, blockersoffensivelineacademy.com. Instagram is probably one of the bigger social medias that we use, Blockers Offensive Line Academy. Twitter, Blockers O underscore line, a couple different places. Emails, blockersoffensivelineacademy@gmail.com. We're located here in Dayton, Ohio area. We're very fortunate to get guys from all over Southwest and Central Ohio. I've had guys travel as far as from Missouri, and I had kids that actually one young man who used to fly in from Kentucky, lived down by the Kentucky-Tennessee border, and his dad was a pilot, so his dad would load him up on the plane and fly him up. On the Sunday mornings, we go training for high school age kids. We go Sunday mornings at 10, and then for the younger kids, well, we go at 11, and then we do some one-on-one training. For those people who would like to have the one-on-one piece and more attention, just focused on their athlete. We do that as well, and that's kind of scheduled by request. But usually do things on Sunday because I just Offensive Line Academy. It was a way for me to stay in the game. I
Hmm.
work in public education, and when I moved from teaching into administration in my previous district, administrators weren't allowed to coach, so I had to step away from coaching.
Yeah.
After about 3 years of being away, football has done great things for me, and I've been very fortunate. And went to my wife and I said, "Got the itch, missing it, and I can either get back into coaching or do an O-line academy." And I think she started enjoying me not being gone as much as I was with
Hmm.
all the hours as a coach. And she's like, "Go ahead and do the academy." And started off small. Had about one or two guys the first year, and it's blossomed up. And it's just like all the coaches at college and the high school level. The guys when they graduate and they move on, they come back some during their time off. But I also try to get them when they're at the college level of as far as this is your time off, take your time off. You need that and because they're going 24/7 as we all know at the college level. So it's a way for me to stay involved in the game, make a little bit of money from it for my wife, and keep her happy on that side. But it's done some great things for me. And there's one thing I got on my Instagram account, and I found this quote somewhere, and I've had T-shirts of it made, and it really sticks. And it says, "God used football as a vehicle to help me." And then in the back it talks about get an education, be disciplined. You, that's where I see like without the game of football, I would not be sitting where I am today. And I know that, and I'm fortunate. I had great coaches from high school all the way, up until my you know goal of going to the league and playing in the league. But also through those guys, I learned also that football is a very small blimp in our lives of what we do as players. And so I made sure I cashed in and got the degrees and things of that nature. Which, not to go down this topic, but that's the concern I have the most right now when I try to mentor some of the college guys is the transfer portal. I'm scared of the lack of degrees, and
Hmm.
that's going to come with that. NIL is what it is, but the transfer portal is the piece that concerns me because I have a lot of guys I played with that are great people that didn't finish their degrees, and they may be worse off today than they would have been if they got a job and a career
Right.
run out of high school and not done the
Right.
college football thing.
Yeah.
Because we all got to go playing pro, and that's what we all strive for. But someday or another, we're going to go pro in something else, as the commercial says, and those degrees can help us to where our bodies are going to be beat up pretty bad after our playing days, and we need those office jobs. We can't necessarily go do all those physical labor jobs as offensive linemen that carried a lot of heavy weight and did a whole lot of banging every single day. We step foot on the field. So I just, hope to try to mentor guys to make sure they achieve those degrees and use football as the vehicle, what it's for. And not to think it's going to be the thing to take care of them for life, but everything they get from it will be the things that take care of them.
Well, I appreciate your effort and your contribution, and anybody that's involved with somebody that's willing to give that all that influence to them is a fortunate person for sure. And I've been to your socials and your YouTube channel. You got a ton of resources there. So if you're a young guy, then you can't get to Ohio and you want to go check out those resources, I would highly recommend it. A lot of teaching and learning going on there. And so don't waste time looking for it. You can go straight to those two places, the Instagram for sure, and the YouTube channel's exquisite. That's really good stuff there. I was checking that out a little bit this afternoon. before we sat down to talk, and there's all sorts of things on there. So if you need help in something, reach out and contact him or go see those videos that are available on the YouTube channel there. And again, Coach, I'm very grateful for you being here and taking time out of your schedule from coaching and teaching as this time of year kicks off, where your academies are going to be opening up and you'll be coaching and reaching out and helping those kids get better. So I'm very thankful for that. And I've really learned a bunch today, enjoyed the memories and the trips down memory lane. And as we sign off here, remember, if you master the trenches, you'll win the war. Hope you're enjoying Trenchometry. Assuming that you are, please hit that like button and subscribe. Remember, master the trench, you win the war.